Hey, welcome back to the channel. David here. It's the second day of 2022. I thought it would be fun to look back at some purchases I made in 2021 that brought me a lot of joy. And, I think for a lot of people, 2021 was a rough year. I had a lot of health issues going on with my elderly parents and family getting COVID and having to travel during the pandemic and all that kind of stuff. So, whenever times are tough, I always like to kind of look back and see, what the things are that are kind of making me happy and bringing me joy. So I'm going to limit this to mostly kind of like media related stuff. I may do another video like this for books that I read in 2021 and how those kind of changed the way I think. But in this one, we're going to focus mostly on retro games, books, and comics. So I'll just give you a quick overview of what I'll be looking at here, and then I'll run through it in more detail. So one thing I picked up was the Super NT from Analogue. Really awesome way to play both SNES games and Super Famicom games. I picked up a bunch of Sega Saturn fighting games. And this was one of the systems I had as a teenager that I have a lot of nostalgia for. And I'll get into the reasons for that. I also picked up a pretty big stack of older Dreamcast games as well. These are also mostly fighting games. I'll go through these in a bit more detail. And then another thing that I did this year was, because I've moved around a lot in my life, I haven't typically collected anything, just because it would mean I would have to move it, each time I moved and, potentially even mess up whatever I bought each time I moved. And so now that I have kids and I'm a little more settled down, I feel more comfortable buying some of these things that I've kind of wanted to pick up for a while. So, some of the big heavy items that are not fun to move are always books. And I really like buying art books. I was really into illustration as a kid and actually considered trying to do illustration as a career. I just was never really good enough at it or didn't practice it enough or whatever. But some of the reasons I like all these fighting games is because they're kind of what introduced me to like the Japanese art style, like manga, animation, stuff like that. And so anyway, I just have a lot of nostalgia about that. And so one of the games I picked up too was Darkstalkers. So here I've started collecting basically the Udon art books. I'm not sure how well that's gonna, see if I can get the camera to pick that up. These Udon art books are really awesome, and I'll show you some pages out of that. But this one is Darkstalkers. I picked up another one that's like Darkstalkers versus Street Fighter. If you're not familiar with it, Darkstalkers is kind of like a gothic horror themed fighting games that's got like a Frankenstein-like character and vampires and succubi and all that kind of stuff. It's also got like the Chinese zombie, I can't think of what you call it off the top of my head. And then another artist I really liked from the 80s and 90s was Masamune Shirow. He did like Ghost in the Shell and Appleseed and a bunch of other stuff. And I didn't actually know this was something you could purchase until I talked to a good friend of mine, Eric Spagnuolo, who collects and sells comics. He has a really great channel I'll link to in this video. But for a long time, you just couldn't find this book, at least in the US, and it was like super expensive. And he tipped me off to the fact that you can just buy the Japanese version. So I think I'm actually going to end up picking up all of the art books by him eventually, but started with that one. It's kind of the most famous, well, it's the first, it's like the most famous of the set. And then, just picked up some other books. I'll go through these in more detail in a bit, but this is the Mega Man X book from Udon. And it's the official complete works of Mega Man X. And then Mega Man official complete works. So this is the main initial book out of that run. You can see it's a lot thicker. This is a big book. And then along the same lines, you can see a theme here. This is the Street Fighter, the Art of Street Fighter book, again by Udon. And this thing is a monster. It's like, how many pages is this thing? It's 450 pages. It's like 448 pages. So this thing is heavy. Yeah, and then just kind of the other general category, and I'll go through some of these again in more detail, is just comics. So I picked up a bunch of comics. Picking these up was definitely inspired by my friend Eric's channel. I was never really like a big comic collector. I didn't read a lot of comics. But I think sometime in high school, as I mentioned, when all like the manga started showing up here, there were some that I did read. And those were like, one of them was Dominion Tank Police, which I really enjoyed. I think Dominion's like the more general name for the series. There's other runs besides this, but again, this is the Masamune Shirow one, and this one was like, normally his stuff's kind of more like pinup art, and there's some of that in this, but this one's just a little more like cute, I guess. I don't know. It's not really like chibi or SD or anything, but it's just kind of a more cute art style than some of his a little more adult style. So anyway, yeah, I just started picking up some random comics for the few series that I cared about when I was in high school or middle school. I think some of that stuff's going to just start getting a lot harder to find now. So it seemed like a good time to start doing it. Also, before it gets like super expensive, which is a problem I'm having with video games. So I'm going to do a pass through these kind of individually now and talk about them a bit more. And I'm going to try and keep this video from going on forever, but we'll see. So the Super NT from Analogue, it's a really awesome machine. So basically what it is without getting too into the weeds, it's a faithful recreation of the Super Nintendo hardware using something called a field programmable gate array, which is basically like a programmable piece of hardware that you can, reconfigure to have it match different machines. So what's interesting about that is it's super faithful. Like, you can have the same bugs that you have on the original Super Nintendo, but it's also going to be completely faithful to like the way the sound's emulated and the way the rendering happens and like the speed of the games and where they slow down and stuff like that. So, you could argue it's better to use like a really great emulator that doesn't have any flaws at all. But for me, if I'm going back and I'm playing these old games, it's kind of cool to be able to play them like exactly the way that I remember them and have the sound be exactly the way that I remember them. One thing that I noticed on some of the emulators for Super Nintendo is just like the sound can be way off, or I don't know, there can just be little quirks and stuff that kind of take me out of it. So this is really cool. You can use ROMs with it. I think you can like load them through this little USB connection here, or through like a cart that has them. But I really wanted to be able to play my actual Super Nintendo cartridges, and then also the Japanese like Super Famicom cartridges. Those are cheaper to purchase versus their US counterparts. And then there's also just a lot of stuff that came out in Japan that we didn't get. So I'd been eyeing that one for a long time. Was really happy to get that. They do limited runs, and I had missed a couple of the early runs, so I got the run that they did like mid 2021. I'm not going to go through like every single fighting game, but in general, I was one of the weirdos that had like a Sega Saturn and a Sega Dreamcast, and those systems didn't do super well in the US, and a lot of games, I actually never saw like a lot of the games that came out on the system in stores because they just didn't sell well. And a lot of the games that came out only came out in Japan, or you couldn't get, they didn't make a lot of them in the US, so it's kind of hard to find. But to me, what was really cool about those systems was they basically allowed you to do you play the same kind of games that you could play in arcades, which at that point in time were still kind of ahead of the curve a little bit of where like home consoles were. And I was really into all the 2D fighting games, so all the iterations of Street Fighter, Marvel vs. Capcom. Like, here's Street Fighter Alpha was one of my favorites. This is Street Fighter Alpha 3. And they just eventually had these huge rosters of characters, so it's kind of hard to see that. Huge rosters of characters. And, just the animation on it, especially when we got into Street Fighter Alpha and Street Fighter 3, the animation was just like the best you could get in a game. Like, it was approaching, like, let's say like Disney level animation or whatever, like 2D animation, but One thing that's cool too is the instruction books on these games all have really have a lot of artwork in them, and they're really nice, like full color books. So there's cool like artwork from that era, which I really enjoyed. I used to just practice drawing these characters like over and over in high school when I was bored. So have like notebooks full of trying to draw Street Fighter Alpha 2 in particular. And then yeah, similarly there were like a million of these games that came out in the late 90s, but the Marvel vs. Capcom line was really awesome because, first it allowed you to play, Marvel against the standard Capcom characters, but they were also just like a different kind of game that were more high energy and frenetic. And you had, you fought with a team instead of just one person, so you could like swap team members in and out and get assists. And these were always games that at the time were kind of cool because you had to play them in an arcade. Like there wasn't really a great way to play them at home until they started to come out on the Dreamcast. So yeah, I just have a soft spot in my heart for these. And again, the artwork on these, there's like just tons of awesome art in these manuals. They really went all out on making these manuals back in the day, which is something I miss. The newer games, you just don't get any of that. Like there's literally no manual, I think, in any of the Switch games I've purchased. But yeah, just really great artwork. I love the it was like Bingus, I think, or the early some of the artists on the Street Fighter games. One thing that's really interesting with them is I thought it was like totally different people between the games who did the art, and there certainly were, but there was like a couple people who just evolved between like each iteration of the game, and their art style changed. I think Bingus is the main guy. And then again, yeah, so like Marvel vs. Capcom 2. There we go. On some of these, I really prefer the Japanese covers as well to the US ones. I'm trying to see if there's anything really... Yeah, so like So the rosters for the characters are really nicely done. They're like special moves, so... here's some of the Marvel characters. Who do we have here? Yeah, this is like Capcom. We've got Jill, Tron. We got some mixed in too. We got Captain America mixed in, Psylocke, Rogue. But yeah, I just really love the artwork. Like the style and the animation and everything was just like top notch in my opinion. So it's still some of my favorite art from games. So yeah, this is like the last of the Street Fighter 3 iterations, so this is like Third Strike. And again, like the manual on this thing is just absolutely enormous. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but you can just see like how thick this manual is. It's a book. It's just a little book. And again, at the end of the manuals, like the character artwork's like humongous. So it was just fun. Like you had a lot more. You got a lot more with your games back in the day. Especially in Japan, I feel like all the Japanese games just kind of went like over the top with the extras that you got. Sometimes the U.S. versions didn't go into this much detail. But to me this is awesome. Like I love playing these games, but one of the things that is great to me about these manuals is I can just pop them out and like just look through the characters and. Don't have to go through all the hassle of popping it in and playing it, making sure that the systems are hooked up. You can still get some enjoyment and nostalgia out of them. So I'm trying to be careful when I close these because they have all the original inserts and stuff, and I don't want to totally mess them up. And then this one is like the most insane of the bunch. So Virtualon, this was like a big arcade hit back in the day, and you were playing these fighting robots, and they had like a special hardware booth for playing these. Whoa. Sorry, again, I'm dropping the inserts. But yeah, just this book is insane. It's like humongous. I think it's like almost 100 pages. And again, in the end, it's got, all the fighters, all the different robots, the mechs or whatever. So yeah, just a big fan of collecting these old games. I'll probably continue to collect the Japanese versions of these. Try to get them all. Can get a little expensive, but if I buy like one or two here and there, sometimes it can help out. Keep, it's expensive to buy them all at once, but if I can spread it out, that's nice. Yeah, the art books I'm probably not going to go too in depth with. I will say, if you like Street Fighter art, like this is probably one of the best books to get. It's one I wanted to get for a long time, and I hesitated picking it up. And I think the retail price is $60, but you might be able to get it for lower. It's totally worth it. It's like almost 500 or 450 pages of like full color art, and it covers a pretty wide range of the games. Yeah, Bingus, here we go. It also covers a lot of stuff you may not have seen, like here's kind of the Pocket Fighter, Puzzle Fighter era artwork. But yeah, it goes through, the original games, it goes through Street Fighter 2, it goes through Street Fighter 3 and Alpha. I don't know if it gets all the way up to the Street Fighter 5 or 4 and 5 series. I think it stops short of that. Just taking a quick look. Yeah. Oh, it does. It does have some Street Fighter 4, at least. Not sure about 5. I think it's Street Fighter 4 mainly. So, and it doesn't have a lot, but it covers some of it. But it's also organized by the artist too, which is kind of cool. So it has Akiman, Kino Nishimura, Bengus, Ikeno, Daichan, Edayan, Shinkiro, and then just some other like random illustrators who did things. So yeah, big fan of this book. Similarly, if you have any nostalgia for Mega Man, and you're gonna get any of these Mega Man books, this is the one I would get. It's just Mega Man Complete Official Complete Works, and it's a really thick book. It's about 300 pages, and it covers all the early Mega Man games, and then it gets into some of the Mega Man X stuff a bit, and then it also has a lot of just other artwork that didn't come directly out of the game, that was maybe from like comics or promotional materials. And a lot of that stuff's like really, really awesome. It didn't have all the restrictions of what you could do on the system. So, people could go crazy. This is like a 25th anniversary edition poster. It has a little bit of the Mega Man, is it Zero series? It doesn't have a lot. There's another dedicated book for that, but it does have a little bit of it. I'm still not sure how the artwork in that series is really cool. It's very different from the other Mega Man art, and I really like some things about it, and other things it's definitely more like, I mean, it sounds silly, but it's geared more towards like little kids. But yeah, I still dig it. I like the coloring a lot on it, like just the general forms and the coloring I like a lot. I think there's just some stuff like the proportions and things are so intended to look just like really little kids or something, that it seems different to me for some reason. It's probably just because I didn't grow up playing it, honestly. But yeah, these books are great. Like, they cover a lot more than just the games. There's promotional materials, there's covers from comic books, there's just all kinds of goodies in there that unless have spent a lot of time looking into it already, you've probably never seen those things. Yeah, the Intron Depot book, again, really awesome book. I'm just gonna flip quickly through it, but you may have seen these images and not like known the artist, but yeah, just like some really iconic stuff from manga and anime from the 80s and 90s in here. So yeah, big fan of that. And then on the comic front, again, I said like I wasn't a big comic collector or anything, but I did find out there's some stuff that I am interested in that's been created. So like, I really like the Mega Man Master Mix stuff from Udon. I'm gonna try and collect all of these. I don't think there's a lot of them, and they're really thick books too for comics. They're, I don't know, probably twice as thick as the average comic. Here's some Appleseed stuff from Masamune Shirow. This is just a piece of art that was really iconic to me from the 90s. This is later in the run, or a later comic in his run of creating Appleseed, but this is one that just I really stood out to me. This is kind of showing his other side, so this is getting less away from like robots and pinups to more just like the chibi cute style. So it's kind of weird, he just would kind of alternate between those two styles over time. And then I was able to find the actual comic run for that Dominion Tank Police comic that I had a book for as a kid. I never actually saw the comics anywhere, but was able to find that. Seems like Dark Horse tends to have a lot of the stuff that I was interested in. And then here's another one that was really famous from Dominion. This isn't the Tank Police, this is like an earlier run. But yeah, another kind of iconic cover. I started trying to get the Ghost in the Shells. So there's like, I think 5 or 6 of these that are relatively easy to find, and then the first 3 are pretty expensive. And there's like an ash can as well. So I have all of them except the ones that are like the harder ones to find. And then originally I was looking into getting all these, and I kind of stopped in favor of getting the art books. But yeah, my friend Eric has been grabbing a few of these here and there as he's looking through comics and sent me a bunch of them. And this is one of those cool things where like you can put all the comics together and it forms like one giant art piece. So yeah, it's really exciting to get some of those. And yeah, here's just a different run of a Street Fighter comic that I picked up. Again, it's Udon's, so kind of anything Udon does I typically like, at least like the artwork from it. And then yeah, while I was just digging around for some of these things I knew I wanted, I ran across some other fun things, like here's a old Ren and Stimpy comic book from back in the day. It's cool too seeing like what the things that were being sold at the time to you. So like here's those old Tiger handheld systems. So it's kind of fun looking through and seeing what stuff was happening at the time. And then yeah, kind of another cyberpunk style comic book was like Dirty Pair. I think this is a short run that's just like recreating an episode from a TV show or something. But was happy to find this. I'd completely forgotten about it, so it was kind of a cool surprise to go through and see that in the bins when I was looking. But yeah, these are some of the things that I picked up that I've been interested in. Either interested in picking up things that I knew about, or had found out about this year and wanted to go and make sure I was able to get some of these things before it became more difficult to find them. And like I mentioned, yeah, it's just been kind of a rough year, so trying to just pause and remember some of the things I bought this year that brought me joy. Obviously, those aren't the only things that made me happy, but anyway, I encourage you, if you've had a rough year and you've got a little extra money to spend, to treat yourself, to get something small at least. I'd held off on a long time on buying some of these things, and I feel kind of silly for waiting. Anyway, hope you have a great 2022. Hope it's better than your 2021. Thanks for watching. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit the bell for notifications, and leave a comment below and let me know what kinds of things you picked up this year, or what things you're thinking about picking up that you're kind of on the fence on. But yeah, I encourage you to just do something to treat yourself in 2022. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.